How are you guys? So is Tony here?
Tony?
Abuna, is Tony here? Is Tony here? No, Tony's not here? Okay. So I'm going to begin by apologizing. I have Tony has the patience of Job. He really put up with me for an extended period of time. And so, God bless Tony. Is my...
Do you want to come and sit here beside us?
So, the way it works is this: whenever they run out of people to ask to speak and they get really stuck, I'm usually like the 17th option, and you get stuck once a year. So it's I'm so happy to be with you, and I have to tell you, you have the purest of heart in Abuna Buttress. His smile is contagious and just makes all my worries go away. There's a lot.
You're wearing white glasses.
No. There's a lot of worries, but it's interesting because this week when Tony said, let's talk about ethical dilemmas, I paused and I said, I always ask myself, what am I solving for? I start every encounter that I deal with and say, what am I solving for? Because you go down rabbit holes really quick in life. And I started thinking about ethical dilemmas, and I always come back and I say, the passage about what is lawful is not always right? And you think about the bombardment we're experiencing today, and I thought of it and I said, lawful but awful, right? And that's the journey we're on. And sometimes ethical dilemmas, we sometimes think of ethical dilemmas in a very big abortion, transgender identity, very big picture, right? And we come and we sit and talk about these things, and then we all leave and say, yeah, but that's not, I know that this is right, I know this is wrong, very black and white things, right? But I'm going to take you through some examples. Imagine you're at a barbecue, and someone is either very mean-spirited to someone, says inappropriate jokes, does something, lies about someone, gossips. And it's all false, or someone is being put in a position where they're not being celebrated, you have choices. You can smile, you can withdraw, or if the devil really wins the battle, you can add fuel to the fire, right? That's a very simple encounter. That's real world, right? But then I also want to explore the idea of there are many challenges we face, and does it mean I have to encounter every challenge and go on a crusade, right? Imagine a village is overflowing or a flood's coming, and some people go put sandbags, others don't. Are the people who put the sandbags more entitled to protection, or is it possible that me staying off the road because others are putting sandbags so we don't all race and trip each other over on the way back? Maybe there's some good in that, right? Share with you a story of a lifeguard who was on a dock, and he was looking at the ocean, and someone clearly lost control and was flailing, and they were drowning. And everyone's yelling at the lifeguard to jump in. And he waited patiently. He didn't jump. And eventually the lifeguard jumped in when? At the moment that person stopped flailing and was their weakest. And he jumped in and saved the person from the water. So people were screaming at this lifeguard. And they said, you could have left him to die. And he said, if I went in when he was flailing at his strongest, we both would have drowned. I had to wait to that moment to jump in. So when you think about the challenges of the day that we face, I hope we go through this process today where we identify what they are, and then we identify what is mine to act on versus what is mine to just let be. Okay? So what is an ethical dilemma? Who can define it? Yes.
Problem that challenges your thoughts, your morals, your values, your job. It's conflicting with
Perfect, yes.
morals and values.
So you said it is a problem or an encounter that challenges conflicting or competing goals. Are they usually black and white? They some can be, but often they're not as clear. And if there are times where there is a right answer, but acting on the right answer has implications. You know, the best way to think about life is we want life to be black and white. We want it to be absolute. But life is more like a tie-dye t-shirt. It's just a mess, right? Some parts look really good, other parts look really awful. But it's one t-shirt, and that's our life. What causes these challenges, do you think, in your experience? What elevates these encounters to become these challenges? Yes. Ideals within society, competing with your belief system, your judgments on right and wrong, all of these things. I use the example of the barbecue because it's a really simple example. But those things happen a lot, right? I'm guilty of it. And there's times you're paralyzed in action over inappropriate talk and you're like, what do I do, right? Rick Warren said this: when faced with a choice, do not simply consider how it will affect you, but how it will affect all involved. And then you go back all the way to Aristotle. He shared ethical decisions ensure that everyone's best interests are protected. When in doubt, choose kindness and fairness. So when in doubt, use kindness and fairness. I found a really old statistic, and I would venture to guess it's exactly the same today. It says this: nearly 2 in 3 adults believe ethics vary by situation, or that there's no unchanging ethical standard of right and wrong. Among those in the 18 to 34 age group, 79% said they hold to the view that ethics change based on situation. I would say it may not necessarily be the person's belief in the ethic, but it is the person's decision to act. I think that changes. I want to share with you that when I think of ethics, I actually think of a counter word that is really important. It's integrity. And it's not integrity to others, it is what is my personal standard on what do I stand for. I actually came across this and I thought I'd share with you. Wrong is wrong even if everyone is doing it. Right is right even if no one is doing it. And I'll share with you what someone wrote about integrity. It says, first, what integrity's not? Doing what's popular instead of what's right, acting differently in private than public, saying one thing and doing another, letting fear dictate your decision, taking credit for others' work, valuing success over ethics, hiding your mistakes, following the crowd, turning a blind eye, making excuses, blaming others, and staying silent. A long list that we encounter and we get challenged with. So integrity then is transparency, ethical behavior, keeping your word, acting with courage, treating others fairly, owning your mistakes, respecting confidentiality. If someone shares something in confidence, are you the Pandora's box where you throw away the key? Or are you sort of the megaphone that accidentally shares it? Showing respect for others, admitting when you're wrong, standing up for what you believe, refusing to compromise your values, and doing what's right even when it's hard. Those are the challenges we face. So now, I always look at these things and you talk in the abstract, and what I love about the Bible is the Bible, has contemplated everything before its time. There's something in the Bible that we can relate to, even though some of the literature is thousands of years old. But the interesting thing is, we think we're more complicated than we are, but humans have actually really been unchanging at our core for a very long time. We actually are very predictable. And it's funny because you think of yourself and you're like, oh, this is a unique encounter. But you'll find a Bible story where it's like, wait, I'm not as unique as I thought. This happened like 4,000 and 5,000 years ago. So you think about Daniel. When Nebuchadnezzar came out and said, you're not allowed to pray, everyone else shied away. What did he do? He stood up and prayed. And listen, by the end of this, I'm not asking you to be crusaders and go out there and take every single fight, okay? He took a risk and he did what was right. I get it. I share with you, in the recent sort of era we live in, so whenever I'm asked to speak, rarely do I get a really simple topic like God is love. Like I wish I want those ones, right? But I'm very fortunate that I get the less popular topics to talk about. And I've said to people around me, I've said to my wife, I've said it, I spoke recently and said, I know there will be a day where someone's going to report me to my law society over what I say. Whether they're right or wrong doesn't matter, right? That's the new cancel culture. And I've become comfortable with that, sadly, right? But those are the challenges we encounter. Now, at the same time, I'm not out there provoking and intentionally going on homophobic, slanderous rants, right? But you look at Daniel, he made a decision. A lot of other people didn't. And I'm going to say to you, the ones who didn't, maybe just it wasn't their time to make that call right there and then. I'm not giving a soft out. You'll see what I mean later. You look at the scripture, you look at you got wisdom of Solomon and the baby, right? Ethical dilemma. What does he do? He challenges the two competing and says, okay, let's split it down the middle. Not a functional solution. And I share with you, I said about Daniel praying and how others didn't pray, maybe publicly. And I look at Christ at Gethsemane. What did he do? He knew what was coming. He could have run away. He went and paused, and he prayed. There are times where we are encountering these challenges where we're so reactionary. Pause. Pray. You're not alone in this war. Dorothy Day says this. She said, I used to pray that God would feed the hungry or do this or that. But now I pray that He will guide me to do whatever I'm supposed to do, what I can do, I used to pray for answers, but now I'm praying for strength. Philip Brooks says this. He says, I pray for a stronger back, not a lighter load. I can't control the challenges I will encounter, but I can ask for the support and strength to encounter through Christ who strengthens me. I want to take us through some of these situations, right? Because I don't think it's always very helpful for us to talk in the abstract. So let's really drill down into real examples of situations we encounter. Some of us can be in a work environment where someone's, you think of the deception that can happen in a workplace. Safety measures are hidden. You see the Boeing example where a whistleblower is out saying the safety record was intentionally misled and hidden. Or if you make an allegiance with this person, you might rise in your corporate ladder at the detriment of someone else, or whatever it is, right? Social media. How many people go on crusades or share stuff or write? My favorite is when people are writing cryptic messages about each other and they think they're so smart that no one knows they're writing about the other. Do you share it? Do you like it? Do you challenge it? Do you engage people who post random, let's say, volatile or opinionated things, and you go on there and you become a crusader? Think about healthcare workers in today's world. If you're in pharmacy, do you dispense the day after pill? If you're a physician and someone wants to transition, how do you deal with that? Someone wants an abortion, how do you deal with that? Right? You think about family. Someone's getting divorced and says, can you hide this money for me so I can understate my assets or whatever? These are all sort of everyday type of things that we encounter. The reality is neutrality is not beneficial. A story is told about a professor who was teaching law, he was teaching ethics, and he said to the student, "You're currently failing my ethics course." So the student slipped him a $200 bill and said, "How about now?" So the professor took the 200, put it in his pocket, and said, "You're still failing." So the student said, "Well, can I have my $200 back?" And the teacher with a straight face says, "What $200? So I want to share with you practical steps. First, ignore the noise. What do I mean by that? We are an alarmist people today. We go from chaos to chaos to chaos to chaos. See, this is awesome. I'm around older people, slightly older, where I don't feel as old. Okay, who remembers CNN when the word breaking news actually only appeared once every 3 months? And it was really breaking news, like someone bombed someone. Today, the word breaking news is literally every hour it's 17 times. And it's okay, I can't keep up with this rage, right? But that's our alarmist reaction. Ignore the noise. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. We react so viscerally to things that don't have direct impact on us, to avoid dealing with things we should be dealing with. I will say this, and I love your feedback on it. Why do you think we are constantly bombarded with existential threats to our faith and beliefs and the trans movement, gender identity, abortion, assisted suicide, or end-of-life treatment, all these things? Am I downplaying and saying these are not relevant issues? Not at all. But on the statistical probability of these things directly impacting me, it's not as high as a lot of other sources or things. Every time sort of Pride Month comes around, everyone gets really worked up, right? And I always ask parents a very simple question. Do you know what music your kids are listening to? And you get blank stares. I said, what do you think is more likely to impact your child? Heterosexual vulgarity, sexuality, or homosexuality, transgender, whatever it is? Just statistical. I'm just talking pure probability. The likelihood is heterosexual issues because it's more common. And I say, do you know what music your kids listen to? And you get blank stares. Why? Because I don't want to deal with like localized issues that I'm actually really responsible for. It is much easier to like sign petitions about issues that are problematic, but not necessarily as impactful directly in my circumstances. The devil, so the king of peace, we know who he is. The devil is the king of unsettlement. He wants us to always feel uneasy. Now, don't leave here and say, okay, Peter supports all these other... No, not at all. But you only have so much energy to deploy. You only have so much to give. The devil is profound in this impact of shocking us. That's his key, right? He wants us to feel the world is so dark. He wants us to feel the walls are caving in. When same-sex marriage was legalized, I don't know, it feels like 20 years ago or more, I think we reacted so poorly. And I'm not talking about we as, I'm just saying we as Christians in general. Did we know why same-sex marriage became legalized in Canada? Do you guys know why? Because of?
Protest, petition, movement,
No.
population.
From which perspective?
Legalization. Like I'm just saying, just from the legalization. Why did it get legalized in Canada?
Agenda.
Okay. Court challenge, what?
Tax purposes.
Tax purposes. So you're actually closer. It's not tax purposes, but it was actually legal. And it was really interesting. So the law in Canada is very distinct between common law and people who are legally married. Why? There are a lot of people that don't want to be subject to family law because family law has all these rights on division of assets and spousal support and all this, and some people do not want to engage in that regime. They want to be free to live their lives. They don't want to sort of have any implications if the relationship breaks down. Same-sex couples did not have any protection if their relationship broke down legally. because they didn't qualify under Family Law Act purposes. It was only heterosexual relations. So imagine a couple that was together for 37 years where someone sacrificed their career for the benefit of another, and the relationship ended, and that person was out on the street. Not advocating, just explaining. To your point, absolutely there's an agenda, and they're a bunch of jerks. A civil union would have worked perfectly fine. They could have called it anything. But what did they insist on? Has to be marriage. And that's our, right? Peg in the sand. But because of our reaction to say, no, don't legalize it, because we didn't understand the underlying issue, all of a sudden we became very intolerant. Go ahead.
Well, the left, they'll push the envelope, millimeter by millimeter.
Always.
You know,
Always.
like if somebody would have came 20 years ago and said, okay, we're going to make Easter a world transsexual day. Excuse me, sorry for the words. We would burn down the Parliament. But that's literally what just happened in the United States.
Which part, sorry?
That's what happened. That's what they just did in the United States.
What was the first part? I missed the first part.
And they'll inch towards their goal.
Agreed.
It was already ridiculous.
But you know what happens though? And this is the interesting thing. They always overreach. And then they start fighting. You're going to laugh at the statement, but it's actually the truth. Traditional gays and lesbians are offended that the trans movement has hijacked their movement. Why? Because they are completely at odds with each other. They have spent years saying homosexuality is not mental, right? The trans and gender identity and everything else is all mental. We have separated gender from sex. Sex is biological, gender is psychological. Who would have thought that I'm going to say traditional gays and lesbians? Ironic word, right? But that's the truth. Sorry, I can speak to you guys about this, but I can't speak. But that's the idea, and especially this past June, 23, you started hearing it. You have the trans men who transition to women participating in female sports, and you start seeing all of these things, and it's like, you know, the swimmer was like 616th in the men's circuit, and now is the number. It's like, well, you know, when Caitlyn Jenner, who transitioned, says, how can a biological male participate in female sports? A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. But the only thing they're united against is when they feel they're being attacked. Ignore the noise. Does that mean be passive? Does that mean, you know, no. There's a time and a place for our involvement in things. I picked the most hot button issue on purpose because you need the extreme to make the point, right? If we go into subtleties, we don't see it, right? Anyone in medicine or in the medical profession will tell you they always show the disorder at its most extreme state so you see it. But in the minor, you can't see it. I encourage you to ignore the noise or embrace the noise as long as you're actually truly impacted by the issue. This isn't being neutral. I'm a big believer that you only have so much to give. So much mental energy, so much time. Make sure your time is directed at the things that truly directly impact you the most. You know, basic things, and I'm talking about parents with kids, but just to give you perspective on it, right? Computers, kids that have computers in the room. Do parents have blocks to see if they're on pornography or this or that? All these issues, it's almost like we don't want to deal or acknowledge the actual challenges that are impacting me, but I want to talk about all these abstract issues because they may impact later. You think about what we've been through since COVID, the sacrament of the Eucharist and how we took communion. And the challenges, the devil is magnificently brilliant. Something that has been normal to all of us, upheaval, doubt, challenge, poke. COVID was an extraordinary sort of like petri dish for someone to evaluate human reactions to things. The devil is a disruptor, and the most he wants to disrupt is your peace. When you're not at peace, what happens? You make bad decisions. How many of us are rushing outside the house and you have the coffee sitting on the ledge and you are in the worst rush ever, and you take that cup and it spills all over you, right? I'm already late. If I actually took a deep breath, paused, and said, okay, I'm already late, I'm not gonna fight it. 17 more seconds to get out the door is not gonna, but no, we scramble. And then we go and coffee spills, but then we forgot our wallet, and right? So in order for us to really progress and make an impact in our lives and the lives of people around us, ignore the noise for the sake of noise. There was a joke in February of 2020. Was COVID 20 or 21? 20?
2020.
Oh.
How do you not remember?
It is a really sad state. Like that whole phase blurs together.
It's like 7 years or something.
Yeah. So in February of that year, there was an impeachment trial of Donald Trump. The first. And in March, COVID hit. So there's a meme that says, it's really strange. All my friends that were constitutional experts in February are now epidemiologists all of a sudden. And that's the noise I'm trying to get us to think about. Think about it from that perspective, okay? So first, ignore the noise. The second thing is, laugh a little. Just laugh. It is really therapeutic to laugh. Because you have two choices, laugh or cry. We'll take laugh. Solomon might say laughter is mad, but it's also good medicine. And it can diffuse tension as we figure out next steps. Third thing is consult the Bible. How many times do we engage in these situations and actually pause and go to God, read His Word, seek His guidance? Or do we just jump into action? Right? The Bible's our GPS. Before we had Google on our phone, we didn't know where we were going. Turn right, then left, and do you know the house with the blue brick? And then you get to the house and the brick turned red, right? Those days are gone, right? And, or my favorite, it's like the house under construction. It's like, that's the stupid, it's like eventually it's not going to be under construction, right? But that's what the Bible is. The Bible is a roadmap for exploration. And with the Bible, with time in the Bible, We have all slipped away from something that the older generation was much better at. And maybe I'm overgeneralizing, maybe I've just slipped away from it. Keeping wise counsel. Who is in my circle? Or is my circle just for, fun times? Is my circle just one for, entertainment solely? We don't talk about that stuff here. Or is my circle one that's always going to just acquiesce and say yes to everything? Or is my circle doom and gloom? Right? Because it could be multiple. When you're faced with something, who are you asking and reaching out to? See, what happens is, unfortunately, we always kind of come to Abuna after we've really screwed up. Sorry, Abuna, we have a big problem. It's like, well, it would have been helpful if you just asked before, right? But we don't ask. We do. Right? Keeping wise counsel is really important. Earlier I talked about picking and choosing your time, about Daniel and the decree for Nebuchadnezzar. I share with you that there's a time for silence and a time for action. Remember when Christ enters the temple and he got angry and he overturned the money tables and everything that was in the temple? I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that was the first time he encountered that scene during his ministry? Or was it there always? It was there. Why didn't he turn the tables every single time and became enraged every single time? Wasn't the time for action? Inaction, where intentional, is action. Okay? And if I can leave you with one thing that's most important is, in this world of social media where we just, get riled up, choosing kindness over being right goes a very long way. When faced with challenges, just choosing to be kind. Unfortunately, we always want the last word. And with the last word, sometimes gets to be the last conversation. That person may never speak to you again. You might win an argument but lose a friend. Remember, no one wants to play chess with a pigeon. Right? Proverbs 15:1 says this, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." I feel very strongly about trying to absorb people's anger. And I'm very particular about my word. I said absorb, I didn't say take it on. Absorption means let it bounce off me and fall off. Don't carry others' baggage. Yours is heavy enough. Don't seek to be right. We always say, oh yeah, look at that and this. Like we have a very particular worldview of ourselves as a church, as a Christian body of Christ. But I'm going to tell you, every walk of life has extremes. We're almost entering Passion Week, and anyone who is as a deacon around Passion Week, the devil's amazing. okay? You want chaos? Get a bunch of deacons together to figure out whether it's EE or EI. And it's like, man, we sound like the buffoons at the Tower of Babel, right? But the devil knows very powerfully that if he can disrupt that group, then the peace is devout from everybody else. Someone once said to me, he was an older gentleman in the Anglican Church, and he said, "Peter," I was like, "Yes." He says, "The devil resides in the choir. He doesn't need the congregation." It's like, thanks. I conclude with this, Proverbs 2:10 and 11, and it says, "For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you." Thoughts, concerns, questions? I put you to sleep.
We just got tampons in the men's bathroom. That's a positive.
So you should, go rogue, turn it upside down like Christ turned over the table.
My friend uses them as nosebleed stoppers for his children. So he's probably gonna use them.
There you go. And you know something, guys? A lot of these things are so aggravating and frustrating, right? But which battle are we going to pick? Which battle are we going to pick? Like, I'll share with you gender-neutral washrooms, okay? No, you laugh, right? But let's really talk about that. Because we use buzzwords, right? Because, listen, let me just be very honest. There are people on both sides of every equation fueling the same fire from different angles. And I'm being honest about this. You go to restaurants sometimes and the sign says like female, male, but they're like single unit bathrooms, right? Be honest. If your gender's washroom is used and the other one's open and there's no lineup, you're telling me you're going to wait? I'm not diminishing, okay? I'm just saying things are more nuanced than we we use sometimes. One of the things, I forgot this one, and I apologize. This is really important. Fact check things. Figure out the facts. Figure out the facts.
Even hypothetically, say it's an arena where it's just like
of course, of course.
Yeah.
Figure out the facts. How many of us, like, God bless our parents, they all go to WhatsApp University, right? No, I think they've graduated to WhatsApp, and some are on TikTok. It's like Nutella's going to cause you cancer. What else? Like, there's all these really uniquely distinct things, and you're just like, I won't say who does this, but someone comes to our house once a week. And okay, my mother-in-law. Every week we have a new prohibition that is getting like installed in the house because she heard somewhere about something. So Nutella's cancer causing. I had a few other examples, I don't remember. But unfortunately, we don't really actually fact check. I'll give you an example. And I was guilty of this, okay? I own it. So Justin Trudeau wore that picture of the Last Supper, and it was like he was making fun, right? And I think he was Jesus or something. I don't remember what it was. And we saw the picture. We had to have a strong condemnation, and we ruined our Christmas because it was around Christmas time. We ruined our Christmas, and we read this letter, and we were like really angry. and I wrote the letter, so I'm fully owning it. But I didn't fact check it, right? That picture was like 9 months old. Like, we could have dealt with it like 10 days later and it still would have been relevant, but we ruined Christmas. I was just like, the devil knows. He knows how to poke, he knows how to push our buttons, right? So, you know, I think a lot of things, we don't go to the source. We just take noise and we go. Guys, we know what's right and wrong. But sin has existed all the time. Literally, the world did not have sin for like hours, if you think about it. Since our entire existence, sin has existed, and sin is the ultimate like tension between morality, right? So I challenge us to really think about, where am I embracing? And sometimes, honestly, guys, it's just being kind to the one person who's an outsider at work. That's maybe the ethical dilemma I'm facing. If you have a big back, you can absorb a lot of people. And I would say to you about Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel, the other people that were silent, maybe it wasn't their time to be those examples. Maybe you're junior in your career and it's not the time. Of course, if someone's asking you to do something wrong, you don't do it. But maybe it's not the time to go to war. But then as you progress, don't say it's still not my time. God gave you this success. God gave you this courage. God gave you this platform to stand up for what's right. And we have to take it. Success is a privilege, but it's also a currency. When people see you as successful, we have a very unhealthy relationship in Christian ideology around success. Oh no, I need to be humble. No, you just don't need to be arrogant. There's a distinction between confidence and arrogance. God gave us talents, and they told us that parable of the talents for a very specific reason. Go, multiply, use your talents, be fruitful. You bring glory to God. And with that, gives you the ability to take those bold stands, to take those positions of leadership, and then to pick and choose. I really do think about Christ walking into that temple and saying, thought about it, and I said, he must have gone through that temple so many times. He was probably just as angry the first time as he was the 10th time. But it wasn't the time. Sorry, I went on a tangent. I want to hear from you guys. You guys are our inspiration. Yes?
I have a question. Maybe. When speaking up against something that you feel like that goes against your although you think it's right, how do you deal with the fact that it might come across as judgmental from the other party? It, like, obviously a lot of it has to do with the tone and how the message is delivered. But how do we ensure that it's not coming off judgmental and that you're still stating basically a fact that you believe to be true?
Sure. I think we actually have the easiest answer to that question. You know, honestly, my answer is, I just have to tell you that's what my Bible says. I'm taught, so I'm Christian, and the Bible says this. This is what but what I'm trying to say is, I got my cover. I've got my shield.
No, but what if it's not a religious thing?
Oh.
Like, you're not talking about, like,
Okay, so then let me ask you a question. Is it necessary to deal with?
Yes.
Okay. So if it's necessary to deal
What
with,
if you're dealing with a friend or a family member or something in which something is kind of triggering something within you that you feel is incorrect, but you want to deliver the message in a way that's respectful, but you also don't want to come across as judgmental, or you might be faced with, okay, who are you to tell me this kind of thing?
fair. And that's always going to be the natural human defense instinct, right? And unfortunately, sometimes we want to say it and see the person say, oh, you're right, thank you, you are a prophetess, you've transformed my life. That's not going to happen, right? It may take years for them to come back and say thank you. And that's okay.
What if you're not waiting for the thank you?
No.
You're saying it because you don't feel like it's right.
I hear you. So just say it. Say it in love. But you know what I would tell you before, because you're clearly contemplating the scenario in the sense, in a good way. Make sure it's prayerful. Make sure you are praying. And you know what you say to God? Guide me for the right time and give me the words. Because that person is your son or daughter too. And I do firmly believe you will find that peace where you're like, you know, you want to go right now. And the problem is we're very fast, right? It's like, I see something, I need to like go and like
Attack it.
right there. Yeah. And that's like probably the worst time to deal with it, right? Because that's the time the person, you know, how many times have you had encounters with people and it's like, hey, do you remember that time we were out and this happened? And the person's like, yeah, I vaguely do. Do you remember what happened there? Yeah. Okay, could I just tell you something about that? And then all of a sudden, it's a less emotionally charged situation, right? I recently was having a discussion in a similar context where things have happened for years with somebody. I've never uttered a word. And recently I started talking about the subject, but the person was ready to hear about it, right? And I'm talking like 4 years, 5 years, right? So it prolonged. Rome wasn't built in one day. You're not going to solve the world's problems today. Because rest assured, what you solve today, there's 10 more coming tomorrow, right? So I think we don't appreciate the utility of prayer, and we don't use it as much as we should. And guys, I'm not asking you to, 7 times every day I pray, and absolutely do all of that. But that's sort of like the basic. I shared recently, I said, demand from God what you want, accepting what He wants. Christ at Gethsemane didn't say, Father, thanks for this. This is awesome. I can't wait. Hashtag good times, right? He said, this is miserable. Make it pass. If Christ prays like that with his Father, I think it's a pretty good license to say, tell God anything you want to tell him. But be willing to accept anything he wants to tell you. Yes?
Pronouns, he and her, like, it's like an intro at the corporate world where it's sort of like, my name is George, blah, blah, blah. And so I usually skip that whole part, but like, what's the position on that? Like, is that...
I skipped it. Can't find it anywhere. I was just like, this is stupid. I just didn't. But again, this is where, and it's funny, by me not doing it, it gave people around me a safe space to not feel they needed to do it. Right? I didn't think of myself as like this hero. I just said, this is stupid. I'm not doing it. And it's interesting how the behavior and the counter behavior, the sort of trickle down. I would tell you there are teams in my firm where everyone has the thing. You look at my team, you look at anyone on my team. It's not like I sat everyone down and said, hey, you can't put that out. First of all, I thought it was so stupid, I didn't even want to acknowledge it. Because we magnify things, right? That's part of it. The more we magnify it, the more we actually are validating. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You talk about an agenda? Absolutely. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because if you say, but why would I do that? My name is George. Oh, you're intolerant. We need this even more because you don't understand, right? Like and that's the thing, like, about it is, and eventually what ends up happening with some of these like things is they fade away. Like, this was really hot like 2 years ago, like 22, I think, or 21. Like, everyone was like, all of a sudden, and it's amazing how social engineering works, right? Out of nowhere, we all didn't know what gender we were, and we needed to magically, immediately identify our pronouns. It's like, I don't get it, right? And it wasn't a silent protest, it was just, it wasn't for me. And I think sometimes we feel we need to protest, say, I'm not going to do it. Now, don't get me wrong, someone might challenge you and say, well, you didn't say your pronouns, just say, like, some people may provoke, right? And in that point, you just have to deal with it. But
Giving safe space for those who don't have
there you go. Absolutely. You use the words, right?
It's the same argument.
Correct. But see how just not doing it actually does create a safe space. That's the irony, right? Because you're senior, juniors are like, oh, okay, well, I don't have to do it, right? Sorry, I cut you. You had your hand up.
The example you just mentioned explains what I was about to say. Like, I think we all know what you're advocating when it comes to the issue of this, what's going on around us right now. But your action was simply by ignoring it. Because a lot of times when people are raging and proceeding about something, it's not actually because they really embrace the case or they really want to defend it, but it's out of pride, out of arrogance, because that's my case, that's my belief, that's my group of people or religion, whatever, that's why they rage. But the people who really believe in some things, usually they act quiet, if not silent, until the real or the good time comes for an action, or if they are forced.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, there may be a time where I have to deal with this issue, right? I get it. But I think you said something very important. Sometimes people's rage has nothing to do with the issue, but everything to do with attention. I'm a crusader. And sometimes people take like outrageous positions, even like on our side. And you're like, you've really lost it. Like, what are you saying, right? And you're just like shaking your head. But it's almost like clickbait, right? Who can get the likes? Who can get, I started a petition, I got 1,000 people. Yeah, 1,000 people that are nuts like you. And the other side now went even more angry, and their petition has 10,000. Congratulations. Right? No one was talking about the subject. And now the counter movement, because listen, the counter movement's always stronger than the original movement. I believe that, right? Because mobilizing initially is sort of like really passionate people are involved, right? But then rage has that impact of momentary reaction. Petitions are the best thing, right? When you have competing petitions on the same issue and you're just like shaking your head, right?
Change minds.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I can go buy 1,000 signatures from Pakistan for $17, right? So fake news. Back to Nutella causing cancer on WhatsApp University, right? There's a lot of tools out there. Yes.
So, if someone has pronouns and they ask me to use it, aren't I affirming a mental illness. Now here's before I, because they say gender dysphoria, right? And that's how they get the medical transition. Otherwise it would be cosmetic and it would be covered by insurance. Similar to someone who says like, I have anorexia. We don't affirm their anorexia. We don't tell them, oh yeah, you need to lose weight. Aren't I affirming this mental illness if I were then to proceed? Because I did work with a trans woman when this was
Yeah, listen, I don't envy you. Being in that position is a difficult position, right? Especially because they're crusaders, right? They want to make that sort of like, it takes a bigger sort of, here's my approach to it, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I'm not gonna change that person's view right there and then. And I'm only gonna escalate the attention and importance this person is gonna get if I refuse to use their pronouns. Which is what they actually want. They're craving that attention. There's a void of attention. A lot of it is attention seeking, right? I look at it, and I'll take a real analogy, because there are things where they become really hot button for us, but how will you deal with someone who's sexually active outside marriage? You're just going to deal with them in the workplace. You're not going to necessarily be thinking twice over how to deal with them. Yes, no?
We deal with it as we treat them as
And that's how I approach these environments and these situations, right? I think, I'll come to you in a second. I think what ends up happening is we have like this hierarchy of sin, right? We magnify certain sins, and we excuse, or it's like the white lie, right? Little lie, big lie. Sin is sin. My view is we are all made in God's image. I need to treat everyone with that respect. And the devil wants us to sort of hyper focus on, back to the outrage. Look, sex outside marriage, or promiscuity, whatever you want to call it, was the hot button issue at some point in time. Teenage pregnancies was huge numbers, all of these things. We've shifted, right? We almost have the flavor of the month on sin, right? Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors. The devil has his own. So I think that they want you to challenge them, and when you move past it, if you look at the person and just say, they're not well. That's my view on it. Sorry, you were going to say something.
First of which being, we, at our last convention in Kingston, to be more talked to length about this topic. So not only our identity in Christ, but how to deal with these situations in the workplace, and how to reconcile the very political and like religious free zone in the workplace, yet you being a Christian and that investing itself into all parts of your life. And the one thing that I took away from that specific topic was he said, listen, I'll speak, like, this is a prayer he told Saad. He said, I prayed to God and said, listen, I'm not going to go out there and I'm not going to attack everybody around me. If somebody asks me for my opinion, I will answer it honestly. And then funny enough, later on in the week, he got all the questions he didn't want to say. I don't know if we have it recorded as of Edge. If not, I can find out who recorded it.
No, but that's not my point. That's not
What
my
was your
point,
point?
because I'm not trying to go out and say this is wrong. That's not my point. My point is then to say she, when it is clearly like, he looked like the guy, forgive me for saying, I don't mean to make fun, but he almost looked like he was a wide receiver in the NFL. Like he was a large man. I don't mean it in a bad way. You know, longer hair. You say she. Someone told me instead of saying she, say their first name. Whatever you told them to call. So always say person's name is Emma. Always say Emma. Emma did this. Emma did this. Never say she or whatever. Because then you're affirming something. I'm not gonna go out and say to this person. To be honest with you, at some point I even pretty much cut contact because this person always liked to fight, and I was like, I have no time for this.
Yeah. No, and I think if you have, sorry, I misunderstood your point. I thought they wanted you to say their pronoun, like, you know, sometimes it's like Emma, she, her, like, you know, like some people. I thought that's what you meant. I think that is a very creative and probably the most appropriate is use first names, right? Because it avoids. And I will say, like, I'll say this, Kiro, there are people that are just going to be difficult, right? There are people that are just going to be difficult. But let's take it a different step. And your workplace sends around its revised EDI policy. And you reply all to the 600 people with a 17-page memo about how this policy is discriminating your, not the crusade I'm on, right? Listen, when you have a cross on, or you have crosses or pictures, or people know you're Christian, they are acutely aware what your Bible says. Right? Sorry, go ahead.
I completely agree with you in the sense that we give it the power that it has when we give it attention, these kinds of topics. And I completely agree with you in the sense that we should pay them no mind and just wait till they go away. I love that wholeheartedly, I do. But what if it just gets too much? Like, for example, like, we want to be of the same sex and marry each other. And I'll pray for you. And then further, we want to change our sex, whatever. But right now, it's getting to, if your son doesn't want to be a boy and wants to have literal parts of his body removed, then you say anything, you're going to be in jail.
No, fair. And
how do you not give that?
No, but you said something nuanced, and it's important. Which fights do we take on? That's the key. Which fight do I take on? By saying, remove it from the education system, it's a crusade you're not going to win with unions. But by advocating for parental consent, there's enough people that'll be like, yeah, like, what do you mean parents can't know? It's the issue it's like eye for an eye. They give education, we either get the education out or we counter the education. We'll leave that playing field. Let them dominate that space. Let me change the playing field. We always fall into their trap. We're always a step behind. We're always chasing. Right? And I shared last June, I said, you know, I gave a talk and I said, you know, like, we sit around for 11 months of the year ignoring all the issues, and then June comes around and we're distraught. Well, you know what they're doing the other 11 months of the year? Planning. What have you done recently? Nothing. Right? So are we surprised? We are apathetic. You go online and you see like these, you know, extraordinary celebrations of Christ around the world where people are they're just marching for Christ on a random day. And there's tens of thousands of people. We need to drive a different message, not react to their message. You go online and you're like, how did 30,000 people get together and just walk down a street in Portland, Oregon, which is like the most corrupt, woke city in America? and just talk about Christ. What are we doing? Not about their message, but about our message. We wouldn't have ethical dilemmas if we were telling people about our message, but we're not. We're trying to discount theirs. Sorry, I cut you off.
I think that it's also one very smart trap that we're referred for, prepared by the devil. When I think we all feel this subconsciously without even knowing. Like whenever we see one of those people, we feel definitely we are better. We both are sinners. We just sin in a different way.
Sure.
Because we have commands from God. Yes, don't do whatever he's doing, but the second one or the other one is to love your brother. So if I'm pretending like I'm following Jesus by not doing like what they are doing, but still I'm disobeying the other command, which is I do not show love for him, I have the right to condemn the act, not
Yeah, for sure.
the sin of the sinner.
Love the sin, hate the sin. Love the sinner, hate the sin. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
There's a, because you mentioned earlier that, we can refer to our Bible, like, it's easy, we have something to kind of, they're actually trying to change that. I don't know if you've heard of Bill C-367, where deferring, there's a part somewhere in our legislation that basically that says, or like a legal system that allows you to say something like, whatever that concept is about LGBT, refer to any part of the Bible, and it wouldn't be considered hate speech. And you'd say, well, it's the Bible that says that. And so that deferring back to the Bible, they want to remove that clause to defer to religious freedom. And so that, such that if you were to say something about that form of teaching in public, you could actually be charged. Because you can't say that you can't be productive.
Yeah, and listen, thought police is inevitable, right? We are living Orwellian times, right? 1984 could not have predicted a more police state than COVID, right? So I hear you. But I also believe there are so many things that manifest themselves in the legal system that are rejected by society at some point in time, right? I talked about same-sex marriage earlier. One of the most important things for us as a church was not to stop the legalization of same-sex marriage, but to ensure we protect the clergy and the institution from being required to administer. You see, that's the depth of thought we need to go into. And we rarely do because our frustration takes over. But then if I go around and survey and say, are you okay with people who gamble? Hey, what do you think? Some of us are getting together to gamble. Hey, weed's legal. I really like to smoke. Do you want right? There's a lot of other sinful things that we just say, no, they're okay. I'm in control. Right? When I was talking about ignore the noise, deal with the issues that are actually directly impacting you the most, we don't. Why? Because we enjoy them. So we don't want to deal with them. We don't want to remove these vices. And we all have a vice. Every one of us has challenges. If I tell you today, before you start worrying about things that are much bigger scale, do you have your house in order? We are more likely to come clean the church or go to a soup kitchen than go to our parents and help them. Same principle. I don't know what time you guys finish. I can talk forever. You really need to just tell me to stop talking. And then I know you're holding back on difficult questions. Abuna's ready to take all the really difficult ones.
That's why we got you today.
No. But you guys are awesome. And I think really enjoy Passion Week. Seek an opportunity really to see joy even amidst darkness. The key thing is, the journey's painful, but he rose. I recently bought a t-shirt that says Jesus won, right? He's going to win always. He is winning. Imagine that, knowing that he is victorious. But in victory, he couldn't skip pain. To get to victory, he went through a journey of pain. Ethical dilemmas, we may lose friends. We may not feel comfortable in certain environments. But I encourage us not to be crusaders for the sake of being crusaders. Sometimes simply act ethically in the small first. Did Tony come? The person I need to profoundly apologize to? No. So tell Tony I didn't come. Thank you.